As the first wave of NHL free agency winds down, we'll talk about the impact that it's had around the league. We've got that and a lot more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone, and happy 4th of July for those of you in the United States. And welcome to the Friday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Gil Martin from Locked On Islanders. I'm here every Friday with Rachel Donner of Locked On Flyers. And happy Friday, Rachel. We're in July.
I know. Is it like the actual off season now? It just feels like everything keeps going, like between the Stanley Cup to the draft to free agency. It's been a whirlwind couple of weeks.
It has been, but probably one more week of big news, and then things will start to calm down a little bit.
Everybody will be at the cottages by then.
Fishing and cottaging, and yes, it is that time of year. But this week was a big week around the NHL. We had free agency kickoff earlier this week on Tuesday. Let's talk a little bit about the impact that free agency has had. What is, is there one move in particular that you think had the biggest impact?
Not particularly. I think it's, you could look at the Mitch Marner trade and sign as something in terms of salaries in the NHL. I think that is where that deal has the biggest impact, just from a value perspective. And I think that's tied very heavily into the salary cap increases that is going to take place over the next several seasons. And, you're looking at an upper limit of $113.5 million in 27-28. And so these kind of bigger blockbuster deals are going to be more and more frequent. And I think this Mitch Marner deal is maybe the kickoff of that trend a little bit.
And then also, how does the move from not being able to sign a player for 8 years anymore if they're on your team, or 7 years anymore if they're not on your team, affect that whole picture?
I think that's definitely a remains to be seen kind of question in a lot of ways. But I also think that it's just like one of those things that for the NHL, they're going to have to carefully craft what the expectations are. And this league has been such a team friendly league as opposed to a player friendly league.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that to me is the impact there, that I think the balance of power has shifted a little bit to the players because of the salary cap increase. And this is the league's way of saying, you can't lock it down for that long, though. You can get that bag, but we're going to poke a tiny little hole in it. Right.
It is a double-edged sword, though, because you're taking away a little bit of security from the players. But at the same time, those long deals, by year 3 or 4, sometimes it's a bargain because the salary cap keeps going up. But on the flip side, sometimes by year 6 or 7 or 8, the player isn't playing as well as they were when they signed the deal, and it's not so good for the team.
Yeah, I think it's going to change cap planning fundamentally. That's for sure. I think that teams are going to have to do a much more detailed investigation into the value of a player in these contracts, because they're going to have more deals to make. Because if you shorten the length of them, you're going to have more turnover there, or have to renegotiate with the same player more than once. And I think so that creates a lot more chance for error. It creates chance for, risk
and
in
redemption.
signing these players. Yeah. Yeah.
Although it won't kick in right away. So it'll happen, like 4 or 5 years down the line, it'll start to really kick in.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that one of the other major impacts I think that this year is starting to show in a lot of ways is that I think over the last decade, you've looked at like a general manager like Bill Zito, right? Who deserves GM of the year. And we all know that's been an oversight in the league. But I think that given the length of the contracts and given the increased salary cap and given the tax or no tax state situations that some of the teams are in, he has the opportunity to create a dynasty in a way that we have not seen in a very long time. And I think that free agency and how he dealt with it specifically this year is going to be something that other teams are going to want to model and copy and won't be able to in many cases.
Yeah, because
right?
it becomes a chicken and egg thing, right? I mean, on the one hand, you get players to take a little less money to play for a team that they're happy with, that doesn't have the taxes, that has won back-to-back cups, and you get all excited about that. But will teams do that will players do that for a team that doesn't have that pedigree?
Right, but you have to build that pedigree from somewhere, right?
Right.
And so I do think there will be opportunities for more teams to build dynasties through really smart cap management. They just have to do it really smart cap management, which is a challenge for a lot of teams. But like, I think that dynasties become more possible that way with these shorter term contracts, increased salary cap, and some teams with a tax advantage.
Well, the cap going up does lessen the blow that winning teams, it's no longer impossible to keep your core together. And, that has a big impact. One of the benefits of the salary cap is that there was this constant funneling off of top end talent to other teams because you couldn't afford to keep everybody. But with the cap going up as much as it is, you're right. The dynasties become more possible. Having teams that keep a winning core together longer becomes more possible. But is that bad for parity, where there are going to be the haves and the have-nots, and it doesn't change often enough?
I think there's a couple ways to look at it, because yes, that could take place. Absolutely. However, most teams have been in this draft and develop from within mentality, because you kind of had to do it that way because you had to take advantage of young dynamic players on their ELCs making no money, right, for a couple of years, and then their higher salaries will kick in, and then supplement with a couple of free agents, right? But now I really think that balance and the weight of young players on ELCs to veterans, returning veterans to free agents, like that's going to shift, right? Because there's going to be more opportunities to sign those free agents with more room to do it.
And I think it also makes trade deadline day more important, because the odds of you being able to keep a player you acquire, even if they're on an end terminating contract, the last year of their deal, you could still keep them because there's more cap space each year.
If you want them, sure.
If you want them, right? But again, like teams that have been doing this LTIR runaround of the cap, you could end up keeping all the guys or most of the players that you took, even if they were on an expiring contract, because the cap is going up so much that you have the room. So trade deadline moves may even become more important as a result of this.
Yeah, I could see it going both ways. I can see that being the case where a player isn't a rental. They're actually, going to stick around there because there is a chance for that. And that team will have kind of first right of refusal to re-sign that player, and they'll have the chance to negotiate ahead of the free agency deadline. However, if that player also has a huge impact on that team in the playoffs, they may just want to take it to market anyway, because there's going to be more money out there to
Right.
divvy up. So I think,
Could be.
that part of it could go either way, but I do think like it could turn a little bit more Wild West out there.
It could. I mean, I'm just thinking about Brad Marchand as an example. Like a
Mhm.
year ago, they would not have been able to keep him.
No, but like a year ago, do you think anybody in their right mind would have given him that term?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
No.
But this is
And
the impact that we're seeing of the changes in
yep.
free agency and in contracts. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun, and it's never static. And maybe we will continue to monitor this because it's going to keep evolving.
Oh, absolutely. It is definitely going to be an interesting year upcoming.
All right, we have got a lot more to discuss on this week where we had Canada Day and Independence Day in the two North American countries associated with the NHL. We're going to talk about some of the things we want our independence from. We've got that, plus an Olympic agreement coming up next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
We have all been there. We log on early and wait forever for those concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. And live music should be about making memories, not dealing with annoying ticketing platforms. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting those concert tickets faster and easier than ever, and the prices actually drop the closer it gets to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endlessly scrolling trying to find the perfect deal? Game Time Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. And if you wonder what your view is going to look like before you buy, the app will show you a panoramic seat view, so there's no surprises. With Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay, no hidden fees. So take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
So finally, the Olympic agreement is finalized. Let's talk a little bit about that and what it means.
Yeah, so I wasn't aware particularly that they hadn't kind of signed on the dotted line, because the announcement had been made, the participation was confirmed. They'd already announced some roster players. So I assumed the dotting of the I's and the crossing of the T's had taken place, but they hadn't officially announced that per se until this week. And there's definitely some things to iron out there for this upcoming Olympics in Italy. And one of the things was the size of the ice sheet. And as we know, there's, European style or international hockey size versus NHL. This is going to be an NHL rink, 200 feet by 85 feet. And so I think that is an interesting sort of adjustment for the international hockey community to have to make. But it's going to be mostly NHL players. So you got to have NHL ice, I guess, right?
Yeah. Isn't that a disadvantage, though, for the international players who are already at a little bit of a disadvantage having to go up against the best of the NHL?
I mean, I guess, but if you want the NHL players there, you got to give them what they want.
Yeah,
So.
and then there's one other thing that you got to take into consideration, and I hate to be cynical about it. You put more seats in that way. If the rink is not, you get 2-3 more rows of seats as opposed to ice.
I guess that could be part of it too, with you have the opportunity there to sell more tickets. I think there were some sticking points with some of the Olympic rules there. So the players on these teams will be subject to the Olympic and IOC drug testing rules and regulations, which is something of note. And we got official deadlines for the rosters. So each national association has to submit a list of 42 skaters and 5 goalies to their national associations. That's a starter list. And then the final rosters of their 22 skaters and 3 goalies has to be submitted December 31st. They're going to allow adjustments for injury after that point, but really New Year's Eve we'll know who these rosters are beyond
more than just 6 players.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's out there and it's coming. And look, I love seeing, I have mixed feelings, to be honest with you. I love seeing the NHL players at the Olympics, but that 1980 Miracle on Ice was such an unforgettable moment. And you're not going to have anything like that again.
No, but I don't think you ever were, to be honest.
Yeah,
and
no,
I think
that's true. It's a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, the women's tournament had overtaken the men's tournament in importance and popularity just because that was best on best.
Well, now it's back to the men having the best on best, although Team Russia still left out in the cold. So there is one hockey powerhouse nation that will not be included, but and I feel bad for the Russian players, although I totally understand the logic behind the decision.
Yeah, it just seems like it's been going on too long from a perspective of why are we punishing these athletes for what the countries are doing. I think there are some other countries that maybe shouldn't be playing. And why is Russia at this point being singled out for this reason? And so, yeah, I don't get it. I think it made sense for a while, but now it does not anymore. So there definitely will be something missing from the tournament. We have 3 groups of 4 teams. Where Canada, Switzerland, Czechia, and France are in Group A. Finland, Sweden, Slovakia, and Italy are in Group B. And the US, Germany, Latvia, and Denmark are Group C.
Who do you think has the easiest path, if anybody?
Slovakia might have a sneaky good path there, but I don't know. It's tough to say. I don't think it's going to be easy for anybody.
No, I think that's probably correct. And I am really looking forward to seeing the NHL players back in the Olympics. I get why the NHL sort of wanted to hold back, but I think it overall was penny wise and pound foolish for them to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, this drama is like part of the upheaval that we're going to have to go through every 4 years now, because this is just a one-off deal.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to participate in the future, but for now, this is just a one-off. So we'll see how it goes, I guess.
And where are the Winter Olympics next after Italy? Do you know? Because I know one of the reasons that the league was hesitant to participate, or one of the excuses they gave, was time zones and when the games would be live and what the potential audience might be. I think that was kind of a weak excuse, but in this day and age, but that was something that the NHL cited.
Yeah. So my understanding is that the hockey games will be in the French Alps.
Okay. So that's 6 hours ahead of Eastern time in the US and Canada, not Japan when it comes to time differences. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So we'll see. But I am looking forward to the Olympics. I think it'll be a positive experience for hockey fans, and to see, the best players in the world representing their countries is always exciting. We have got more to get to on today's show with Canada Day and Independence Day coming this week. We wanted to talk about some of the things we wanted independence from in the hockey world. We'll talk about that next. So here we are, first week in July, both Canada and the United States commemorating their independence this week. What are some of the things, Rachel, that you were thinking you wanted independence from in the world of hockey?
I would like independence from the puck over the glass penalty. I'm done. I'm just done. I think I understand where they were coming from when it started, but we've just seen so many circumstances where it was just very clearly incidental. and that it's had such a major impact in a game, in the outcome of a game, because you have that puck over the glass penalty in overtime of a Stanley Cup final game. Don't love that.
No.
Don't love that, I'll say. So that's kind of where I would start, is figuring out a way to make that work better.
And, the flip side of that is you don't want to give too many more judgment calls to the officials. So
Right.
you got to figure out how to make it so that there is a clear-cut standard as to what the official is going to decide. But right now, we're seeing too many penalties that maybe shouldn't be being called as a result. My pet peeve, and it's been a pet peeve for a while, is with the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for diving. I hate the fact that if there's a trip or a hook and you feel that it was embellished, the penalties cancel each other out. To me, diving should be called when there is no trip or hook and the player tries to draw a penalty by diving. And then that team is shorthanded. I want to see that rule implemented.
I get that. I think, like, if there's an embellishment call, like, doesn't that mean by default that there wasn't a penalty worth calling in the first place?
I mean, we could call it the Bill Barber rule. You got to penalize the dive.
Now, come on. Come on. Hey, we do not have to reach that far back in NHL history to talk about diving.
But, he was good at it. He was very good at drawing penalties that way. I'll say that. And all respect to Bill Barber, because he was a great player. But I would like to see that rule change so that the dive itself gives the other team a power play.
I think that's a very interesting approach there. I think that all of this kind of dovetails into the other thing that I would like freedom from in the NHL, and that's extended review periods on any of this, including goaltender interference. There should be a clock, and they got to figure it out by the time the clock runs out. Otherwise, the call on the ice stands.
So just do the Jeopardy theme, and then
yep.
And if it exceeds 2 Jeopardy themes, it's over. That's it. Call on the ice stands.
Yep.
And one other thing I want to add, I want to know what goalie interference is. I mean, define it clearly, set up a standard, because I don't think anybody really can define it based on the way the calls have gone. They have been so inconsistent with goaltender interference. I usually with these reviews, I could get like 3/4 of them right by watching the replay a few times. Goalie interference, you could flip a coin. I don't think anybody realizes, what's goalie interference in one game is not goalie interference in another game. When does Toronto get involved, or when do they just advise? Do the referees change it themselves when they watch the replay? It's a mess. I want to know what is and what is not goaltender interference.
No, I get that. I mean, it is a hot mess, which is also partially why I want like extended review periods to be done, because they should know what it is enough to be able to complete the review in a limited amount of time. If the definition is there, the review should go quickly and efficiently. I know this is like a long-standing thing, and it's a lot more like older fans, I would say, who lived in the early days. But just I want independence from loser points. I think it's dumb. If you lose a game in any way, shape, or form, you should not get a point for it. I don't care.
I agree with you. The alternative in my mind is to go to the 3-2-1-0. So that you get 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for an overtime or shootout win, 1 point for an overtime or shootout loss. And if you lose in regulation, bupkis. That would be the alternative. But the problem with that is that, like, it breaks the continuity. Like, the greatest team of all, you're going to do points percentage, because the number of points will just be completely skewed over the course of history.
Oh, well, figure it out.
Yeah,
I'm
you
sure
can figure it out. You do point
there'll
percentage.
be a whole cottage industry of
Yes,
figuring out how to compare teams from different eras.
there
We've done
already
it
is.
before. We'll
Yeah,
do it again.
exactly. So to me,
Oh,
I would
you got 11,000 Stanley Cups when there was only 6 teams in the NHL. How does that compare to the current Florida dynasty? People will figure it out.
And people will write articles and do podcasts about it ad infinitum. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, is 2 Stanley Cups in a row a dynasty now? Or, before it had to be 3 or 4, but there were fewer teams. Yeah, you could go through the whole thing. I mean, hey, the Detroit Octopus was because you needed to only win 8 games to win a Stanley Cup. Now you need 16. So whole different era. But yeah, I would like to get rid of the loser point or make the adjustment. It artificially keeps the standings close, but the closeness doesn't mean anything because, yeah, you're only 6 points out, but it's almost impossible to make up 6 points with the loser point in the league.
My favorite potential, eventual thing, if they change the point system, is drilling hockey players out of saying, well, we just wanted to get those 2 points. And they'll forget and say it. So that'll be a fun aspect of it when they change the point system. I'm not saying if, I'm saying when.
I hope you're right, but I'm not holding my breath. I just get the feeling that the league likes giving fans essentially false hope because, you look at the standings. Hey, we're only 3.5 games out of a playoff spot. If we just get hot right now, we're right back in it. And you can win. You can go 5-0-1 and gain 2 points in the standings because of the loser point. It's
right. And I dislike loser points so much that I'm willing to keep shootouts, which I also don't like.
No, I don't either.
But if they got rid of the loser points, I can live with the shootouts.
I would add shootouts to things I would like to get rid of that I want independence from because I don't want a skills competition. I'd rather do a 10-minute overtime than a shootout. But and under no circumstances should shootouts be part of the playoffs ever. No way, no how. Let them play till 5:00 in the morning. God bless them. But do not have a shootout decide a playoff game.
Yeah, I really don't like shootouts. I agree. I think it should be a 10-minute overtime and then it just kind of is what it is. But
and I'm okay with ties. I really am.
I know. I am too. I am too, especially as a soccer fan. It just has never bothered me. Ties have never bothered me. Sometimes a game is evenly matched and a tie is the correct outcome of a game.
And sometimes a tie feels like a win and sometimes a tie feels like a loss, but that's all part of the mix, I mean,
right.
When a struggling team beats an elite team or ties an elite team, they could feel really good about that, even without getting the 2 points. Or if a goalie, stands on his head and you get the tie. I don't mind ties so much. I get the idea you want to have a winner and a loser, but the shootout is so artificial. It's so artificial.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that has become entrenched in the NHL. But I think, one of the other things that I would like independence from is waiting for the NHL schedule to be released at this point, because it's July 4th. We do not have an NHL schedule for next year. Last year came out on July 2nd, which was a little bit late in my opinion, even then. But now we're in this mode where because the season goes on so long, we don't get the next year's schedule until the first week of July. But that ship has sailed because I mean, unless they're going to announce it on July 4th, which seems weird to me, but I suppose anything's possible. But I would like the schedule, please.
Yeah, I would like the schedule too. Time to start making plans, right? Figuring out what our falls and winters are going to look like. So, and I always enjoy when the schedule comes out. It's exciting. So hopefully we can talk about that next week on the show. Yes. So we will get to that. That's going to do it for us today. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe. I will be back on Monday. I know you will be back tomorrow with the Women's Hockey Spotlight with Erica El Ayala. We've got you covered 6 days a week here on Locked On NHL, bringing you the biggest stories from around the league. Have a great holiday weekend, everybody, and thanks for watching and listening to the Locked On NHL podcast.